Hi. My David had his crisis of faith in the Watchtower as God's organization earlier than I did. And we had only been married a few years when he had this crisis. And at the time I was very worried and concerned for David. And later also I was concerned for our marriage, what this was going to do to our marriage. Because he was leaving the Watchtower and I was a committed witness. But at the time, I did give David the benefit of the doubt that he was sincere and that he wanted to do right. In the in-between time, before I came to my crisis, David said that all through that period of time, he believed that I would end up leaving the Watchtower. He did not doubt that I would leave. And you might ask why, or what would give him that reason to have such confidence. I think it was because he knew that I loved God and I loved truth. And in the face of that, I would soon recognize that the Watchtower was not God's channel and was not moved by God's Spirit in what they were doing. So I couldn't help but think of that aspect of our lives when I was reading a section from C.S. Lewis's book, The Four Loves. And he's in the chapter on charity. He says, "It is too late when the crisis comes to begin telling a wife or husband or mother or friend that your love all along had a reservation under God, or so far as a higher love permits. They ought to have been warned, not to be sure explicitly, but by the implication of 1,000 talks, by the principle revealed in 100 decisions upon small matters. Indeed, a real disagreement on this issue should make itself felt early enough to prevent a marriage or a friendship from existing at all. The best love of either sort is not blind." Then he continues to discuss the need for charity, the need for agape love that we all have. This is what he says. "We are all receiving charity. There is something in each of us that cannot be naturally loved. It is no one's fault if they do not love so love it. Only the lovable can be naturally loved. We can be forgiven and pitied and loved in spite of it, with charity, no other way. All who have good parents, wives, husbands, and children may be sure that at some times, and perhaps at all times in respect to some one particular trait or habit, they are receiving charity. Are loved not because they are lovable, but because love himself is in those who love them." He also says, "The invitation to turn our natural loves into charity is never lacking. It is provided by those frictions and frustrations that meet us all in all of them. Unmistakable evidence that natural love is not going to be enough. Unmistakable unless we are blinded by egotism. When we are, we use them absurdly." And then he's giving you some possible quotes people might have. "If only I had been more fortunate in my children. That boy gets more like his father every day. I could have loved them perfectly. But every child is sometimes infuriating, and most children are not infrequently odious." Okay, not my boy though. "If only my husband were more considerate, less lazy, less extravagant. If only my wife had fewer moods and more sense and was less extravagant. If my father wasn't so infernally prosy and close-fisted. But in everyone, and of course in ourselves, there is that which requires forbearance, tolerance, forgiveness. The necessity of practicing these virtues first forces us upon the attempt to turn, more strictly to let God turn, our love into charity. These frets and rubs are beneficial. It may even be that where there are fewest of them, the conversion of natural love is most difficult. When they are plentiful, the necessity of rising above it is obvious. So I guess we should wish for plenty, because it changes us. And this reminded me of a passage of scripture in Ephesians 4. As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And verse 7, but to each one of us grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. So I would say we all need agape love ourselves, unconditional love, and we also need to learn how to give it. I'm going to link to a video called Yahweh's Marriage to Israel, Model of Covenant Faithfulness. Our example of unconditional love is God Himself. And the second one is from the series of screw tape letter videos that I did. And this one, screw tape being a senior devil talking to a junior devil, it's the devil's work against agape love in the family. So I'd like to also thank you for watching this series on C.S. Lewis's book, The Four Loves.